What we are seeing here is clear proof that the concept of global warming presented to us by those who are seeking to create a new world order using this concept, we are seeing that it is not true. Nature has come to show us with all this snow that global warming is not true. They have told us that the large amount of carbon emissions in the air has caused the earth to heat up, giving the greenhouse effect. Now, if this is true, then it would follow at a period when snow is supposed to come, we're supposed to have less snow because the atmosphere has been heating up through carbon emissions and we have been having global warming. But we see extreme snow falling, so much extreme snow, and so far and wide. This clearly means there is no global warming. Yet we know that the sun is much more hotter these days, and we know that the weather is much more extreme. We have seen large storms suddenly coming, vicious hurricanes, plenty flooding. All this amongst of moisture in the air attacks global warming as a concept. But when we have deserts and we have drying and we have no rain falling in an area, this is usually used to point to global warming. But as we say, look on the other side and you will see more extreme rainfall and more extreme snow, showing that the atmosphere has not been inundated with carbon emissions to the extent of global warming. That is a complete lie, and that whole idea has been proven to be wrong, so they've changed the name to climate change. But the climate has always been as it is. You have weather, you have famine, to various extent. The climate has always been like this. But what we are seeing is global weather disruptions. The weather is being disrupted by extreme weather. And this is the reason why we believe in GWD, global weather disruptions. That's what you are seeing, not global warming. And the weather is not proof of global warming or climate change. But we know one thing for sure. Real science have shown us that this global warming is largely due to the sun, due to the activity upon or on the sun. So there is no global warming, there is no climate change, but there is global weather disruptions, and it's going to get worse and worse and worse as signs of the end that Jesus Christ is coming soon according to the Bible. So we call upon you to accept Jesus Christ as your Savior in the light of what is going on. Prepare for the second coming of Jesus Christ. The weather situation will get worse and worse, but let all of this drive you to Jesus Christ, that you may look to Him for salvation, for security, for assurance of salvation as the end draws near. In Jesus' holy name we pray. Amen.
We do have this winter storm that's going to develop. We already have storm watches in effect for the low country, and this is going to continue up the coast. Here's Wednesday, a wintry mix for the Carolinas, and then up into New England by the time we get into Thursday. So we could look at the first nor'easter of 2018.
Increased baroclinicity produced by a stronger temperature gradient provides energy for more severe weather events. Many of the most significant and devastating storms in eastern North America and western Europe, popularly known as superstorms, have been winter cyclonic storms. though sometimes occurring in late fall or early spring, that generate near hurricane-force winds and often large amounts of snowfall. Continued warming of low-latitude oceans in coming decades will provide a larger water vapor repository that can strengthen such storms. Meteorologists are going to be glued to the new Goes East satellite watching a truly amazing extratropical bomb cyclone off New England coast. It will be massive, fill up entire western Atlantic off U.S. East Coast, pressure as low as Sandy hurricane winds.
You have this big heating in the Arctic area, and that causes the polar vortex, which is a byproduct of the high pressure pattern over top of the pole. It's causing that to break down because we got a lot more heat coming from the ocean up into the atmosphere. That essentially changes like the jet stream. It causes the jet stream to kind of do dips farther down. The polar vortex is the jet stream. Whenever you see big storms coming or heat waves, if you look at the jet stream, you'll see these big dips. What happens basically with the polar vortex is you get a lot more lobed structure to it, and those lobes penetrate down far over top of the planet towards more temperate latitudes. If you're on the outside of one of those lobes, there's a tendency to draw up warm air much further into the Arctic than you would have otherwise. And if you're on one of the cold sides, you'll draw down cold air down into that lobe on the other side. So you get more extreme heat waves, more extreme storms, more extreme cold. So people in, the southern states, for instance, will go, man, I'm in southern Florida and it's like freezing cold here in February. It's supposed to be warmer than this. Well, you're sitting underneath that lobe that is drawing that cold air down from the planet. Some people will be sitting up in Alaska at the same time and say, wow, it's way warmer up here than it used to be. And it's because that warm air is penetrating much further north.
So there's lots of evidence that the loss of ice north of western Russia blocks the jet stream and allows colder air to reach into eastern Asia.
A similar thing happens in the eastern United States in the sense that the sea ice loss north of Alaska is fairly pronounced, especially in the summer and autumn. That tends to build up this upper air ridge in the early part of the winter, even in the midwinter. And that in turn leads to a constant downstream impact, which is the northwest to southeast flow that reaches the Midwest and the eastern third of the U.S.
Good morning. What do we have on the book? It is 50 degrees Fahrenheit, 8 degrees
So some of the scenes out there as a result of Winter Storm Grace, and I'm meteorologist Alex Wilson here in Boston, Massachusetts, where the focus now shifts back to to a frozen America, at least the eastern half of the country getting in on some bone-chilling cold, and that includes the city of Boston, Massachusetts. Now, with Grayson, we had the wind, we had the snow, and of course the coastal flooding. I want to mention that we've also got delays still lingering into today. Some of the rails, there are delays on that now, MBTA, and of course we still have delays at Boston Logan Airport. Departures now over an hour, about an hour for delays. But yesterday, it was quite a scene. Here yesterday, you could barely see me, and at the coastal locations, flooding was an issue. Even here in Boston, on the Long Wharf, we had some flooding. Situate, though, we had water rising well into some of those communities that left houses underwater, low visibilities from the snow and those strong winds, and even some rescues needing to take place because of the high water. And cars were stranded. We saw our own Jim Cantori in Rockport helping some folks get out of some of that higher water as it approached and moved on shore. So a very active day as a result of Grayson. Now the winds are offshore. They're out of the west. That is allowing for an offshore flow, so we don't, of course, have those coastal flooding issues. But as I mentioned, there were some rescues that took place yesterday, including that of a harbor master in Situate. Take a listen.
We had a situation yesterday where our harbor master, Stephen Moe, was trying to relocate one of our boats to a safer area because it was getting banged around. He brought it over to the Mill Wharf restaurant, and unfortunately it was tying up a gust of wind came and brought Stephen and knocked him into the water.
I saw him and I just said, I don't have much more time. I can't hold on anymore. He grabbed me in. He's trying to pull me up, and he said, you need to help me.
It's hard to get out of those docks in the summertime, never mind in the wintertime during the middle of the nor'easter.
I'll look out them for the inside. A whole different story today. He saved my life. He saved my life.
You know, amazing stories of heroism of folks who were able to get out there, brave those conditions to help others, and that is now the scene moving forward. We've got communities opening up their doors to get people inside to warm shelter because temperatures are going to be the story as we head into the weekend. Overnight lows will drop below zero here in Boston as well as other parts of the Northeast. Feels like temperatures, wind chills will be as low as 20 degrees below zero or more because winds will stay breezy even into our Saturday. Now, our wind advisory in Boston ends at 10 o'clock, but we keep wind chill advisories throughout the weekend. Take a look at the alerts that are in effect, and there are your wind chill forecast values. 20 degrees below zero or more for much of New England as we head into the day on Saturday, even around lunchtime on Saturday. Highs here in Boston tomorrow may not get out of the single digits. If that occurs, that'll be the first time since 2004 Boston had a high in the single digits. It didn't even hit 10 degrees. And when we look at a wind chill forecast like this, you know you're up against the cold. Wind chill values staying anywhere from 10 to 20 degrees below zero as we go through the start of the weekend. By the time we get into Sunday, close to, but not quite to zero, Mark.
Yeah, Alex, that is just brutal, right? Cold air across the Northeast, and yet it's not the only spot that's dealing with the cold. This is the water cooler talk, pun intended, across basically the eastern two-thirds of the country. So let's look into the Southeast, where that cold air is also spilling down into the South.
A deadly Arctic freeze has blanketed the American Midwest with lingering, record-breaking cold. In Minnesota last week, 45 below zero, in spots colder than the surface of Mars. In North Dakota, wind chills of 50 below. Celsius or Fahrenheit, at that point they're pretty much the same. In Chicago, setting record lows in the new year, a river of ice.
It really stings the face, and I usually don't come out here like this. I'm normally dressed like a ninja. Only my eyes are showing.
Now, a new storm targets the entire U.S. eastern seaboard with the rapid, ruthless force of a bomb.
We're going to see what meteorologists call a bomb, a storm that strengthened so rapidly in 24 hours that it almost seems like a hurricane with snow.
Wintry weather has frozen fountains from New York to South Carolina, dropped the first snowflakes in Tallahassee, Florida in 30 years, and frozen Niagara Falls in time. In Iowa, it suspended this car in place.
I couldn't even tell you how many inches thick of ice that it has on it.
And left vehicles piled up in a deadly crash on the New York Thruway. But the record-setting chill does not make global warming fiction.
Other parts of the world, if you look at temperatures right now, are actually somewhat above normal. We're one of the coolest places on the planet right now. So this in no way refutes the notion of climate warming or climate change.
The lethal cold has left 2 dead in Milwaukee, 1 in Detroit, and several more as far south as Texas. Despite warnings against annual polar plunges, some in Boston traded in parkas for swimsuits in Boston Harbor. The U.S. National Weather Service has issued wind chill advisories and freeze warnings from Texas to Canada, but the monster cyclone now descending on the eastern coast of the U.S. is expected to strike hardest in New England.
It sounds terrifying. Bomb cyclone. It's also called bombogenesis.
A massive winter storm called a bomb cyclone threatens to slam millions in the east starting tonight.
The Weather Channel's Greg Postel says it's gonna be epic. What the heck is a bomb cyclone?
Well, it refers to a low-pressure system that develops very quickly at a certain rate. And this one actually exceeds that threshold by a lot. We're likely to see blizzard conditions across parts of the Northeast, and I do believe we'll see some snowfall totals in excess of a foot and perhaps wind gusts over 60 miles per hour.
How crazy is the weather? It actually snowed in Florida this morning.
People here in Florida are just out of their minds.
Candace Campos is a meteorologist with WKMG TV in Orlando.
We haven't seen measurable snow in Tallahassee in over 30 years. So you can imagine everyone was walking out with their flip-flops. They turned around and they were just adding all the layers.
Check out this car entombed in ice in Baltimore following a water main break. And imagine being on this ship in Minnesota. Look at those massive icicles.
That is amazing.
Much of Europe is on high alert this weekend as severe weather wreaks havoc. In Slovenia, in northern Italy, more than 2 meters of snow fell in a few hours overnight. Several days of heavy, wet snow have already set off one avalanche that killed a German woman and her daughter on an off-piste ski run. In southwestern Germany, heavy rainfall has caused widespread disruption to a number of cities hit by flooding. The threat of landslides has forced authorities in many areas to issue evacuation orders. A number of roads have been destroyed and shipping traffic on the River Rhine between France and Germany has been halted because of the high tide. It's a similar situation in the French capital where heavy rain has caused the River Seine to rise by more than 3 meters. With more downpours expected this weekend, officials say they've readied emergency measures in case of flooding. Poland, however, is experiencing unusually warm weather that's led flowers to bloom in parks and gardens across the country.
France is gradually returning to normal after the havoc wreaked by Storm Eleanor, although the French Alps are on maximum avalanche alert following heavy snowfalls. At least 3 people have died and 2 more reported missing since Wednesday. These include a man found dead under a snowdrift and a fireman who was swept away in torrential waters during a rescue operation. A search is also underway for 2 men feared drowned in the Saône and Loire and Haute-Marne regions. Altogether, 20 départements remain on high alert, due mainly to snowfalls, heavy rain and flooding in the east, north and southeast of the country. As well as France, Belgium, the Netherlands, Switzerland, Germany, Ireland and Great Britain were also affected by Storm Eleanor's high winds and heavy rains.
January the 4th, 2018. Guys, you're looking at live images from a few moments ago of webcams up in New Jersey. This is unbelievable. This is what it looks like inside a bombogenesis, as they call it. You're looking at Casino Pier North. It's a surf report. Notice the winds are northwest at 65 miles an hour, 26 degrees, water temperature 40.3. That difference right there helps strengthen these storms. But 65 mile an hour winds is nothing to play with, and the gusts probably are reaching close to Cat 1 in your 70s. If you watch this, it will start to white out. Also, you can see the Beach Pass little building there in the bottom right, the door blown open on it. But if you've looked around and looked at the DC traffic cams, things like that, it doesn't seem so bad, but this storm is kind of moving up the coast now, and we'll look at where it's at. But guys, this is amazing. If you can sit there and watch it, and you can see the wind intensify. You couldn't live very long in those conditions. I don't know what the wind chill would be at 29 degrees with a 65 mile an hour wind, but you know hypothermia would be quickly setting in. It's moving up the coast, but the temps are going to drop overnight. You've got a lot of people saying, well, it's winter. But guys, the charts are showing that there's certain areas, and we're going to look at that chart, that are 25 to 30 degrees below normal for this day. So it's not normal. And don't forget, it's not just me talking about the Earth going into this cooling period. We don't know how long it's going to last, or how severe it will be, but this is a grand solar minimum, and we're seeing changes. We saw them starting a couple of years ago, but this past summer, with the rapidly developing Cat 5s one after the other in the Atlantic, that broke records. The amount of rain and flooding that occurred during the Houston hurricane that came into Galveston, broke records. And some of this, many people say, is man-made weather. Now, we all know that HAARP, as we look at the current radar, check it out as it moves up the coast. Guys, it looks like you're tracking a hurricane, except you're dealing with snow and ice. But all weather that you see in these extremes is not man-made, okay? I know that chemtrails have something to do with the intense fires in California. There's documentation of that. They've done sampling. And the hurricanes can be manipulated with HAARP somewhat. But when you start going into
drops 24 millibars within 24 hours. That defines bombogenesis. Guess what? This storm actually deepened twice that much in 48 hours.
The tundra. Might be. Maybe colder here this weekend.
increased baroclinicity produced by a stronger temperature gradient provides energy for more severe weather events. Many of the most significant and devastating storms in eastern North America and western Europe, popularly known as superstorms, have been winter cyclonic storms, though sometimes occurring in late fall or early spring, that generate near hurricane-force winds and often large amounts of snowfall. Continued warming of low-latitude oceans in coming decades will provide a larger water vapor repository that can strengthen such storms.
Were injured elsewhere in the country, 4 of them seriously. A train was blown off its tracks in Switzerland, leaving several people with minor injuries. One person was hit by a falling tree in the Netherlands. Windy gusts may reach 200 kilometers per hour, 124 miles per hour. Storm Eleanor is the UK's 5th named storm of the season. Storm Eleanor disruption and homes without power in the UK. In pictures, Storm Eleanor hits the UK. In northern France, the storm cut power to more than 200,000 households, and Eleanor is said to move to other regions throughout the day, including Corsica. Air travel was also disrupted in the capital, Paris, and in the east of the country. In Paris, the Eiffel Tower was closed because of the strong winds. The city's parks have also been closed until the storm dies down because of worries over falling tree branches. A skier was killed by a falling tree in Maurillon, in the Haute-Savoie region of eastern France. In Germany, the storm, named Berglander, has swept over much of the country. It packed gusts of more than 120 kilometers per hour in the west of the country and led to transport disruption, reports say. Switzerland has also been badly hit, with some 14,000 homes without power. The high winds left several people stranded in a ski lift in St. Gallen Canton, overturned a light airplane in stands and snapped the 13 meters, 42 feet, high Christmas tree in the capital burned, Reuters news agency reports. Meanwhile, record wind gusts of 195 kilometers per hour, 122 miles per hour, were recorded on Pilatus Peak near the Swiss city of Lucerne, broadcaster SRF reported. Belgium was put on orange alert, the third of 4 warning levels, with officials urging people to be cautious when going out because of tree branches and other flying objects. In the Netherlands, gusts of more than 110 kilometers per hour, 68 miles per hour, were recorded as hundreds of flights were cancelled at Amsterdam Schiphol Airport. Several main roads and train lines were also closed. Dutch authorities have, for the first time, shut all 5 major sea barriers to prevent flooding, as large areas of the country are below sea level. In the UK, thousands of homes are without power and travel has been disrupted after Storm Eleanor hit there. The Met Office recorded gusts reaching 100 miles per hour, 161 kilometers per hour, overnight, with a weather yellow warning still in place for Wales, England, most of Northern Ireland and parts of southern Scotland. In the Republic of Ireland, 97 miles per hour gusts were recorded, and there was flooding, travel disruption and damage to buildings. A massive bombogenesis, an area of rapidly declining low pressure, will wreak havoc on the northeast this week, threatening hurricane-force winter wind gusts in a region already crippled by deadly cold. The bombogenesis will result in what's known as a bomb cyclone. And the bomb cyclone, expected to strike Thursday, will likely dump 6 to 12 inches of snow in New England and hurl 40 to 60 mile-per-hour gusts. Frigid temperatures strike U.S. Photos, frigid temperatures strike U.S. By the end of this week, parts of the Northeast will be colder than Mars. At Mount Washington Observatory in New Hampshire, the temperature will plunge to -35 degrees Friday night into Saturday, weather observer Taylor Regan said. At last check, the high temperature on Mars was -2 degrees Fahrenheit. But it's not just New England suffering winter's wrath. Freezing rain, Sleet and snow are smothering parts of the southeast on Wednesday. From Maine to Florida, every East Coast state has at least one weather advisory, winter storm watch, winter storm warning or blizzard warning. That's 1,500 miles of severe weather alerts. In Tallahassee, Florida, Ernst Bullard said he's never seen snow in his 21 years there. "Yo, it's actually snowing in Tallahassee," he tweeted. Indeed, Tallahassee had not seen measurable snowfall since 1989, CNN meteorologist Michael Guy said. Track severe weather across the country. The unusually frigid conditions sweeping Florida led to the closures of Florida State University and Florida A&M University on Wednesday. They also forced the temporary closures of Orlando water parks and prompted authorities to open dozens of emergency shelters. In Pensacola, water fountains turned into ice sculptures. In the Palmetto State, palm trees will likely be covered in ice and snow, and could knock down power lines, the National Weather Service in Charleston said. Forecasters expect below freezing temperatures to last for much of the week throughout the entire state, South Carolina Emergency Management said. Charleston is slated to get 4 inches of snow late Wednesday. That would be the most in one day since 1989, CNN meteorologist Brandon Miller said. Runways at Charleston International Airport closed Wednesday, and South Carolina Highway Patrol reported dozens of accidents as snow fell. Authorities urged people to stay off the streets as 1,000 snowplows and salt trucks treated roads and bridges, the state's Department of Transportation said. Georgia Governor Nathan Deal issued a state of emergency Tuesday for 28 coastal counties ahead of the storm. Savannah, Hilton Head International Airport, typically booming with tourists this time of year, closed Wednesday due to severe winter weather conditions, the airport said. But the entire state is suffering bitter conditions. In the south-central city of Tifton, Matthew Stewart Reed shot drone footage of the snowfall, set to the music of Winter Wonderland. At least 12 people in the U.S. have died this week in cold-related deaths, officials said. 6 deaths were reported in Wisconsin, 4 in Texas, 1 in North Dakota and 1 in Missouri. The Texas deaths included 2 homeless people in Houston who were exposed to freezing conditions, Houston Police Chief Art Acevedo tweeted. New York City hasn't warmed up above freezing since Christmas, and the deep freeze will just get worse. The bombogenesis will help usher in another round of blustery single-digit temperatures to the northeast. The U.S. isn't alone in its winter misery. Hurricane-force winds from Storm Eleanor are battering the western shores of the United Kingdom and Ireland. The UK's Weather Service, the Met Office, says the storm is expected to bring gusts of up to 90 miles per hour to parts of the UK on Wednesday. Homes and businesses were damaged by flooding and 55,000 customers lost electricity, said ESP Networks, the main power utility in Ireland. Canada is also getting blasted by numbingly cold air. Temperatures and wind chills have been well below zero. The frigid temperature at the Calgary Zoo in Canada was too brutal for even the king penguins, a subantarctic species that usually strut their stuff outside this time of the year. Zoo employees brought the penguins inside Monday when the temperature dropped to -13 degrees Fahrenheit, -25 degrees Celsius, according to Dr. Malucelli, Calgary Zoo's curator. It's not that the animals didn't like the cold. If I opened the doors, they would come out, Celli said. They enjoy being out, but we just like to look out for their welfare. Freezing rain, sleet and snow will fall along the southeast on Wednesday, and lead the way for a brutal winter storm that is expected to strengthen rapidly as it moves toward the northeast. It could be the first time in years that some portions of the southeast have snow. Residents in Tallahassee, Florida, are expecting up to an inch of snow and ice on Wednesday, but the city has not had measurable snowfall since 1989, said meteorologist Michael Guy. Governor Nathan Deal issued a state of emergency Tuesday for 28 Georgia counties in the coastal region ahead of the storm. Authorities are urging people to stay home as millions of people in the eastern half of the U.S. face below and near freezing temperatures Wednesday. Many schools canceled classes and government offices closed across the Florida Panhandle and along the entire East Coast shoreline. Florida, southern Georgia and the coastal Carolinas will get a few inches of snow plus some ice before the storm turns into a monster storm, dropping heavy snowfall along the mid-Atlantic coast and into the northeast, forecasters say. At least 11 people in the U.S. have died since Tuesday morning in cold-related deaths, officials said. A 27-year-old woman was found dead on the shore of Lake Winnebago after she left a New Year's Eve gathering in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin. Authorities said Lindsay Klima stepped outside to smoke a cigarette and could have fallen at the shoreline before she succumbed to the cold, media affiliate Luck reported. Klima's death is among 5 weather-related deaths in Wisconsin. 2 other people have died in North Dakota and Missouri. 4 others have died in Texas, including 2 homeless people who died in Houston after being exposed to freezing conditions, Houston Police Chief Art Azevedo tweeted.
Duck right in front of us trying to take refuge from the storm. Really vicious storm. I don't blame him. Oh my gosh, that was huge. The bay's just coming right in. Genesis, 980.5 millibars and continuing to drop.
much of the country woke up in a deep freeze. Temperatures in many states at or below freezing and then well below. This Arctic blast has brought in extremely cold weather, limiting mobility in airports and public transportation, making it risky to even go outside. NBC's Blake McCoy reports now from Chicago.
This morning, much of the country is kicking off the new year in a deep freeze. Chicago waking up below zero for the 4th day in a row.
This is freezing out here.
I'm freezing. I'm from Florida. This is craziness.
The Arctic blast has been relentless and widespread. In northwest Washington, an ice storm toppled power lines, officials urging people to stay home. Texas, which is ill-prepared for this frigid weather, is coated in ice. A spatula doubling as a window scraper, and this police officer outside Dallas slipping on a highway as a car nearly slides into him. The dangerous weather has now turned deadly. At least 5 people freezing to death across 4 states. Polar plunges are a New Year's Day tradition. But this year's event in Milwaukee came with a medical warning from organizers. And a polar plunge in Cleveland had to be canceled when they couldn't break through the ice. Niagara Falls this morning frozen too, as the bitter cold shows no sign of letting go.
Some school kids did catch a lucky break today. Class was canceled for public schools in Indianapolis and Cedar Rapids. At many schools, the buses wouldn't start because they've been sitting idle for the past 2 years.
It's not like this in the holiday guides. New York's iconic Times Square has been hit by the winter storm that's brought death and destruction to the northeastern United States. Mayor Bill de Blasio's declared a weather emergency for the city, where locals and tourists alike are making the best of the big freeze.
This is heavy. It's heavy snow. And when it's wet, it's like you can't hardly move it.
I think it's a great novelty. I don't know if I'd like it seasonally. I'm pretty comfortable with the warmth in Australia.
Thousands of flights have been cancelled and delayed. The whiteout conditions saw planes grounded temporarily at New York City's 2 main airports, and many hoping to fly from here at Newark Airport in New Jersey were disappointed.
Our flight was cancelled, and we never got any information that was being cancelled. And now we're delayed, and we're not sure if we're going to be flying out here anytime soon.
The blizzards blasted Boston, where schools will remain closed today. And flooding in the city's tied a 40-year record, the National Weather Service said. The snowfalls come amid a cold snap that's gripped much of the United States for over a week now and left more than a dozen people dead.
We begin with that dangerous chill taking hold of half the country tonight. More than 200 million Americans feeling the bite. It comes after that record snowfall, parts of Pennsylvania and New York still digging out from under 5 feet. And take a look at this. It's hard to make out with all that snow and ice, but this newly released NOAA satellite image is showing the Great Lakes and those thick clouds from Minnesota to New England. And now the Arctic invasion across most of the lower 48 states. This fountain, you see it right there behind the New York Public Library, mostly turned to ice. And take a look, the forecast for New Year's Eve, the coldest in more than 50 years. When the ball drops in Times Square, the wind chill could be -4. And for millions feeling the cold, there is much more snow in the forecast as well. ABC's Alex Perez starts us off from Erie, Pennsylvania.
Tonight, 200 million Americans bundled from head to toe, that dangerous cold snap gripping more than half the country. From the Northeast, where temperatures are 15 to 30 degrees below normal, freezing fountains in Philadelphia and New York. To Chicago, at Midway Airport, it was too cold to fly, more than 80 flights canceled.
Nobody offered any answers, no solutions, anything like that.
Officials warning the cold could be deadly, especially for the very young and the very old.
Extreme weather is more than an inconvenience. It remains a serious and potentially life-threatening event.
Shelters overflowing with people trying to escape the frigid temperatures. The Arctic temps shattering record after record. 17 below zero in Flint, Michigan, 32 below in Watertown, New York, and in Cotton, Minnesota, an unbearable 41 below zero.
It feels like your skin is gonna be on fire.
Tonight, it is colder in Cotton than in parts of Siberia. Meanwhile, along the Great Lakes, plow drivers trying to clear a path through 5 feet of snow. Dave Spiegel had to hire a plow to unbury his car. He says it's the first time he's been able to leave his house in 3 days.
How massive was it?
It was bad. You couldn't see nothing. It was a blizzard condition.
Heavy snow packed on rooftops, icicles nearly everywhere you look. Back-breaking work for Chuck Chernicki, the day spent pushing his snowblower, clearing his home, the 6th time this week.
Getting snowfalls like this are not that uncommon, but it's just the quantity that we got this time was just completely unexpected.
And Alex joins us live now from Erie. Alex, they've been hit with this massive snowmaker, and more snow is on the way. With all those people digging out, you found the one spot where they're putting all that snow?
Yep, right here, Tom Cruise have been working hard to clear the snow all day, truck after truck. We've seen them come in here dumping their loads. Some of these piles are 12 feet high, and now another winter storm watch. Some spots could see an additional foot of snow on top of all this. Tom?
What we are seeing here is clear proof that the concept of global warming presented to us by those who are seeking to create a new world order using this concept, we are seeing that it is not true. Nature has come to show us with all this snow that global warming is not true. They have told us that the large amount of carbon emissions in the air has caused the earth to heat up, giving the greenhouse effect. Now, if this is true, then it would follow at a period when snow is supposed to come, we're supposed to have less snow because the atmosphere has been heating up through carbon emissions, and we have been having global warming. But we see extreme snow falling, so much extreme snow, and so far and wide. This clearly means there is no global warming. Yet we know that the sun is much more hotter these days, and we know that the weather is much more extreme. We have seen large storms suddenly coming, vicious hurricanes, plenty flooding. All this amongst of moisture in the air attacks global warming as a concept. But when we have deserts, and we have dryings, and we have no rain falling in an area, this is usually used to point to global warming. But as we say, look on the other side, and you would see more extreme rainfall and more extreme snow, showing that the atmosphere has not been inundated with carbon emissions to the extent of global warming. That is a complete lie, and that whole idea has been proven to be wrong, so they've changed the name to climate change. But the climate has always been as it is. You have weather, you have famine, to various extent. The climate has always been like this. But what we are seeing is global weather disruptions. The weather is being disrupted by extreme weather. And this is the reason why we believe in GWD, global weather disruptions. That's what you are seeing, not global warming. And the weather is not proof of global warming or climate change. But we know one thing for sure. Real science have shown us that this global warming is largely due to the sun, due to the activity upon or on the sun. So there is no global warming. there is no climate change, but there is global weather disruptions, and it's going to get worse and worse and worse as signs of the end that Jesus Christ is coming soon, according to the Bible. So we call upon you to accept Jesus Christ as your Savior in the light of what is going on. Prepare for the second coming of Jesus Christ. The weather situation will get worse and worse, but let all of this drive you to Jesus Christ, that you may look to Him for salvation, for security, for assurance of salvation as the end draws near. In Jesus' holy name we pray. Amen.